Hi, welcome back. Guys, Contingency Contract is really hard and it took me a really long time to clear it. It must be the worst endgame mode of all time. What do you mean I can't dodge? What do you mean I get frozen so I have to use certain teams to not get frozen? What? I don't have to choose certain hard risks? What do you mean? Contingency Contract just sucks, accept it, hyper grifter. Okay, obviously, you can tell by the sarcastic intro that some people apparently really don't like Contingency Contract because it's hard. That's like the entire point of the mode. It honestly took me a really long time to come up with things to say in the video because what I'm saying has to be common sense, but there are some people who don't see this and don't like Contingency Contract. The most controversial modifiers being the no dodge modifier and all the solidification modifiers that some people say force you to use Estella, which is half true, I guess, but I'm gonna test that out on stream today with my Lightning League lady. But what's really perplexing about complaining about this to me is that isn't that supposed to be what this mode is? You're supposed to choose certain modifiers that add a layer of difficulty, some of them being pretty easy in the way your strategy changes. The modifiers that reduce an element's damage by 90% when you apply it can be used with the modifiers that limit element applications to once every 5 seconds. So when you're using Perlica and Fangi during her ultimate, you can use Perlica's skill to apply electric infliction just as you use Zhuang Fangi's skill, which also applies infliction, but Perlica will be the only one to eat the 90% damage reduction since Zhuang Fangi will be limited and won't be able to apply electric infliction, thus not taking a 90% damage reduction. This forces you to use way less battle skills with Zhuang Fangi, but you do way more damage this way than otherwise. And with the solidification modifiers, you either have to eat the cryo inflictions and freezes, then use the skills you can to dispel the freeze, or you have to control Estella, which doesn't freeze. These two modifiers force you to change up your strategy, and that's a good thing. Game modes shouldn't just be doing the same boring old rotations over and over again on enemies that get more and more HP, and that's exactly the problem here. Now, of course, we will be comparing endgame modes here because that's the nature of the video, but quick reminder to not be tribalistic. Not all comparison is bad when you're doing it in good faith like I am here, and just to enforce that, I will say I do still really enjoy playing Wuthering Waves and HSR's endgame modes, and yes, I did return to Honkai Star Rail recently, specifically for Himiko. Although modes like the TOA and all of Apocalyptic Shadow, which was previously my favorite endgame mode in any big gacha game before Contingency Contract, as well as the MOC and Anomaly Arbitration, all have the same artificial difficulty that is dictated by your characters and your RNG gear and what enemies the devs choose. Now, side note, everyone does exaggerate about these games being the worst thing ever for F2P players depending on their agenda, but both of them suffer from varying degrees of HP inflation, power creep, and artificial difficulty, although it's just a fact that HSR does it way more. I won't be the side A versus side B guy. These modes are the same exact thing every reset is the real issue. They have new enemies sometimes, and other times they have enemies they had multiple times before but with just more HP, and what you play is the same thing over and over again, either with the same characters or a new character that you will play over and over again. Now, I do think every game needs a mode like that, but in these games, most of the actually important modes are all just beating enemies with more and more HP in the same ways over and over again, so they definitely do need more unique modes, and they almost had them, by the way. Genshin and Wuwa both had a light version of Contingency Contract. All of these games would benefit very much from having a Contingency Contract-like mode. Endgame content isn't just about testing what characters you have, it should be testing your skills as well, and skill issue barely exists in modes where most of the difficulty is just HP and beating a timer or a cycle counter. Now, Contingency Contract also has a 10-minute timer with modifiers that reduce it by 100, 200, and soon 300 seconds when that one comes out. But the great thing is, the 10-minute timer is way more than enough to beat every risk put together, and even the 200-second reduction gives you just about enough to beat them all. There are yet no strategies that guarantee you can beat it all with the 5-minute timer though. Max risk might genuinely be an impossible task because of the timer, and honestly, while I thought I would hate that, I don't. The really important bit is that 20 risk is super easy and doable for everyone, and you can get all rewards in spite of the timer. You decrease it simply for bragging rights, and since max risk is supposed to be a top 0.01% of player thing, without the 5-minute timer, a game like this would allow you to drag on forever and makes max risk a much more accessible thing, which I don't think it should be. max risking a super difficult mode should be super difficult, even if the last hurdle of difficulty is a timer. It's fine because this is a real-time action strategy game where you can infinitely avoid the enemies. So again, if you can't clear risk 20, you have a skill issue. If you have a huge ego like me and want to clear higher risk with certain characters, then you'll have to suck up hard modifiers. If you think certain modifiers are more just annoying rather than difficult, just don't play with them and you'll still be able to get an insane amount of difficulty otherwise. Being stubborn about a game mode where you choose your own experience just doesn't make sense, and especially when you start saying it's one of the worst game modes or whatever just because you're being stubborn and not making sense. So what surprised me about Contingency Contract this time is there's not as much people hating on it as last time. I did expect people to hate on it because it's Endfield and every time something new happens, people start hating this game, but this time people are much happy, especially Endfield players themselves. This time barely anybody is actually complaining about this mode, and that's a great surprise. As I said, this mode is now my favorite I've ever played. It's everything I wanted out of Arknight's Endfield. I wanted a 3D Arknight's gameplay experience, and so far that's what Contingency Contract has given me. Although I do still hope for much more with other game modes, right? Can't forget about integrated strategies. Although, as usual, this mode isn't perfect, and I do have a few suggestions that can make it a lot better. First off, I do want Contingency Contract to be stage-based. I want it to always be a patch-long thing where every week we unlock a new stage, and I do want Contingency Contract to have a boss rush stage. I feel like a mode like this really needs a boss that it can just buff up as much as possible, sort of like Apocalyptic Shadow or Hypostatic Symphony, but much better. It can give modifiers to the bosses themselves and not just debuff your own characters. Right now, Contingency Contract is just fighting the same 4 waves over and over again, and while the difficulty modifiers do make everyone more unique than the last, there's no real natural progression curve, which I do want to see. Now, I don't want stages that just start getting harder than the last, more so just different enemies, different modifiers, and different stage mechanics. Maybe we take the current CC and call it Stage 1, which is based on cryo inflictions and freezing your ass off, whereas Stella is meta because she doesn't get cryo inflictions. Stage 2 could be about countering with characters like Snowshine, Stage 3 could be about buffing up battle skills for characters like Mifu and Zhuang Fangyi, and Stage 4 could be the boss stage and favor single target characters like Yvonne. While you might be thinking, whoa, hold up, that sounds like a recipe for HP inflation and power creep disaster. Well, remember that you can choose modifiers, and if you don't want to play Estella in Stage 1, you don't have to, and you'll get all rewards, so there shouldn't be worries with stuff like this, unless they start making anything above like risk 30 require you some new limited units. So basically, what I want from Contingency Contract is more content. I want to play the game more. So again, I love Contingency Contract. I really don't think this mode was overhyped at all, but somehow some people still don't like it, but that's expected. As usual, I just want to see more out of Endfield. 1.4 seems to be a pretty major patch, hopefully, although it could still have something missing, right? 1.3 has the gameplay, but it's really missing the factory and story. I'm afraid that 1.4 will have the factory and story, but miss the gameplay. 1.4, possibly the best Endfield patch? Potential patch? We'll see what happens. I do think they're giving us a couple new modes in 1.4 as well. It might be the first patch where they're really picking things up, so that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and join the Express Rain Discord server for a fun and lovely community to hang out with. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.